Buenos días. Primero quisiera informar que en la parte inferior de su pantalla en Zoom pueden seleccionar el idioma en interpretación, cliquean sobre el globo y ahí pueden escoger el idioma. Okay, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today in this webinar. My name is Tamara Alvarez. I'm the coordinator of the English department at the Faculty of Education at Universidad del Desarrollo. And today I have the pleasure of presenting you the topic of today's webinar, which has to do with how to develop life competencies in our students, which is presented by our guest speaker, Dr. Esia Valenzuela Giovannetti. I'd like to thank all of the members of the academic and educational community that are present in this webinar, given the importance of the topic and its relation to the 21st century skills that actually are present in the national Chilean curriculum. So the idea is that today we will be able to find out or discover how do we put these competencies into practice as a teacher inside the classroom? How do we develop these competencies in all of our students? So just before we begin, a little housekeeping details. We are streaming live through Zoom and UDD TV, which is a streaming platform from Universidad del Desarrollo. We will like to invite you to type your questions in the chat box or in the question and answer panel that is available in Zoom. We are going to gather all of your questions and we're going to place them at the end of our guest speaker's presentation. So I'd like to welcome Dr. Esia Valenzuela. She holds a doctorate degree in educational planning and innovation from Universidad de Alcalá, a master degree in a master degree in educational planning and management from Universidad Diego Portales, and a degree in English language teaching and a bachelor degree in English language and literature from Universidad Católica de Valparaíso. We are extremely privileged to have Dr. Valenzuela joining us today as a guest speaker, and she is known for her expertise in the fields of methodology and life competences. She will be providing us with tips on how to develop these competencies to our students. Without further ado, please, Dr. Esia Valenzuela.
Well, thank you very much, Tamara, and University for inviting me and present this topic to all of you. Developing life competencies in education should be one of the most relevant aims nowadays. Education should consider both not only cognitive but moral dimension of the human being. In this sense, the school is society and society should be the school. The school mission should be to educate human beings full of values and competences to face real life. Most of the time, academic and curricular knowledge are obtained in a training process such as school, technical professional institutes, or universities. But why are life competences important? Every day, more employers consider soft skills in their job selection. These competencies allow human beings to adapt more easily to different contexts of life. Also, they allow future professionals to build confidence in communication skills, cooperation, teamwork, problem solving, among many other important skills for life. As we already know, life competencies are present in our national curriculum by being a core training focus that intends to promote skills transferable to other contexts. In this sense, the national curriculum for 11th and 12th grade organizes 21st century skills in three main areas: For example, in ways of working, students develop communication and collaboration to work in teams and communicate ideas effectively. Regarding tools for working, students need to be aware of digital literacy and effective ways to use the information. Our national curriculum also stresses the attention on the ways we live in the world. Being part of a local and global citizenship demands from people to participate in society respectfully and value other people's ideas, build a life project, and demonstrate personal and social responsibility. On another note, UNICEF describes transferable and foundational skills. Transferable skills are relevant to adapt to different contexts in life. Some examples are creativity, communication, and problem solving. On the other hand, World Health Organization defines psychosocial skills as the ones that people need to face demands and challenges in life successfully. In this slide, you can notice many different competences or life skills that are developed and explained by the World Health Organization. Another example of development of life competencies in education is the Cambridge Life Competences Framework. This offers an organization to develop skills in 6 different areas. As you can see, we have collaboration, communication, critical thinking, creative thinking, emotional development, learning to learn, and social responsibilities. And these 6 different areas are linked to 3 core dimensions, which are emotional development, digital literacy, and discipline knowledge. As you can notice in this slide, the framework offers a detailed breakdown of skills to develop from primary to people at work. So each competence includes can-do statements and a description of what is expected to accomplish in each level. As you can see here on your left, you have the different skills or competences, and also you have some descriptors that are going to be part of the educational context that students can have, not only in pre-primary, but secondary and higher education as well. During this presentation, I'm going to focus the attention on 4 life competences, and I will provide also some examples as a way to implement these different skills in the classroom. So in first place, learning to learn, it's a competence that implements practical skills for participating in learning, such as making notes, as well as taking control of our own learning by developing self-regulatory strategies to become more autonomous and independent. Also, it involves reflecting and evaluating our own learning. Some examples for primary education, it's to develop learning to learn, consists of providing some can-do statements. You can see here in the example a self-evaluation, right? This is how I think I'm doing, that teachers can present at the end of a lesson or at the end of a unit. And students have to decide how well they can manage certain elements in the lesson, right? Here you have, for example, I can do this, I'm getting there, I need some help. Even we can find an example of this of this material, right, in a Minaduc student's book for 2nd grade. Here we have at the end of a lesson, we have this stop and think, and students have to read and show a face that represents how they feel about the content. In this case, it was about a text, a story that they had to read, and they had, I don't understand the story, I need help with the story, I understand and I can help my classmates, right? So as you can notice, we can develop learning to learn competence from the very early stages of learning, that is pre-primary until higher education. Let's see an example for higher education or secondary education. In this case, what we want to do is to develop metacognition in our students. So in the case of higher level students, the metacognitive skills are extremely relevant to prepare autonomy and learning independence, right? So before starting a task, the students should be able to ask some questions to plan their work. So when you give a task to your students, they have to plan beforehand what the purpose of the task is. What do I need to do to complete the task? What they want to achieve from this task, and how much time and energy they should devote to the task. So in this case, when you are developing metacognition in the students, they are also organizing this process, this learning process. And that is exactly what we expect from them. That is to get autonomous and independent in this learning process. Then when they are actually working in the task, another step in the metacognitive process is monitoring. In this case, students need to monitor how they feel that this task is going. Am I making sufficient progress? Are there any changes I need to make to what I'm doing? Am I meeting my goals? So all these questions will help the students to monitor the way in which they are working, or if they need something else. Then after they finish the task or their period, the study period, they can ask themselves about how well they completed the task, what they did well, what they could have done better, and what they would do differently if they had to do this again. So if any of these answers are not satisfactory, or if they consider that their task was not as they expected, they go back again to planning, right? So that's why this is called a cycle, the cycle of metacognition, right? And in this way, when we develop in our students enough possibilities to develop this metacognitive cycle, you are also giving lots of alternatives and tools to be autonomous in their studies, and later on when they also start working. So when we talk about creative thinking, in the case of creative thinking, we expect students to participate in creative activities that promote the development of creative skills. For example, drama, music, and artistic tasks. Also, they can create new content from their own ideas, and this requires flexibility and originality. Another example of creative thinking is to create newly created content to solve problems and make decisions in this way. Students can reflect on the utility of these new ideas and how to use them effectively. Let's see some examples to develop creative thinking in the classroom. In the case of primary students, The teacher can present stories, songs, and also poems, and learners can predict new information. Also, they can personalize objects or animals. The teacher can promote the selection of activities, materials, and some products to work on. In the case of secondary higher education, the teacher can promote creativity, and you are also producing intrinsic motivation. Some examples for developing creativity is using drama, for example, in different subjects. For example, history, even language, and English, EFL, right? So the way in which the teacher can use drama, right, will promote a lot of creativity in their students. Also, project-based learning is an excellent approach to link different subjects, right, together and create new products to solve real-life problems and make learning meaningful. So all these different, let's say, opportunities for learning is a good way to develop creativity and many other communicative instances. When talking about critical thinking, some teachers might consider that is challenging competence, right, to develop. But when you use the correct materials and tasks, your students will demonstrate understanding in organizing and analyzing information as well. Let's see some examples. When you apply critical thinking in the classroom, in the case of primary students, you can promote the prediction of events in stories or in videos. As well, you can promote that students ask questions. Generally, it is the teacher who asks students, but we can also let them investigate and wonder what something is about. So in this way, you are giving students many different opportunities in which they can develop research. They can ask questions about the topic that they are covering in the lesson. In the case of secondary and higher education, reading the current news is an excellent opportunity to develop argumentation and discussion in the classroom. Nowadays, social media provides endless opportunities to develop critical thinking in students. They can decide between real and fake news, for example. They can look for supporting information and analyze the sources, right? So there are many different opportunities, not only for the English classroom, but in history, in all subjects, you can create opportunities to develop this critical thinking. And another competence, how important are our emotions in education? Emotional development affects our learning. In this case, it affects also our ability to carry out tasks at work. And we have experienced that during the pandemic. Emotional development consists of a set of abilities that are needed to understand and manage our own emotions as well as other people's emotions. In this way, we can form meaningful interpersonal relationships. Nowadays, there are many different ways to implement emotional development in education, mainly because of the emergency remote teaching context. In this example, I present the mood meter. This is a tool that helps people build self and social awareness. It helps us to understand how our own emotions influence our thinking and behavior. You can learn more about this tool and the ruler method in brackets book that I'm showing here, right, called Permission to Feel. In this book, the author presents an excellent method to analyze our emotions, and also it includes a lot of emotional vocabulary to recognize. As you can notice here, the students are able to find how their emotions are present at some time during the day, right? So by using the mood meter in the class, your students will be able to identify their emotions with a great variety of related vocabulary. It also gives opportunity to describe the reasons you feel in that way. What color are you in today? Or what's the color that represents your state now? So the mood meter is arranged into 4 different quadrants. And we have a high energy, right, here in red, high energy, but also a low pleasant or negative mood. And here we have also low energy, but also it involves a negative mood or negative emotions. For example, disgusted or dependent or despair, hopeless, etc. On the other hand, we have high energy, right? But it gives you a high way of feeling in that particular situation. So by the mood meter, you give opportunities to the students to know a wide range of vocabulary related to emotions. And this helps a lot the students when you ask them, how do you feel today? Instead of just saying fine, bad, or I don't know, with this mood meter, they can perfectly analyze which is the emotion that they feel, and also a specific mood or specific feeling, right, that is connected to that with that emotion. Another activity that you can practice in your class is identifying your students' positive experiences during the day or during the week. With this exercise, they need to focus their attention on optimistic and beneficial situations rather than negative or pessimistic thoughts. When you ask, for example, your students on Monday, how was your weekend? And they say, oh, well, fine, just fine. But you can tell them to describe 3 positive things that they did, for example, on Saturday or Sunday. And also they have to describe the reasons why they consider those situations, those positive things, positive. Right? So in this way, you have the possibility to reduce some anxiety in your students in order to see the bright side of situations. Another example is the way in which emotions affect our students. In this activity, you can use to help your students regulate their emotions, right? In this way, they change the perspective on negative situations. You can ask them about a problem that they have at home or at school, and the purpose is to get them involved in finding the bright side of the negative situation. To consider not only the negative consequences, but also the positive ones of this situation, right? So this is a very good exercise that promotes in students analyzing some positive consequence, right, that you can find even if the situation is negative, right? And in this way, you not only focus the attention on positive elements of any situation, but they are also analyzing their own emotions, how they can organize their feelings, right? Not only from a negative point of view. So in general, when we develop life competencies, has different uses for the teacher. As curricular development, the teacher can use competence indicators in each learning stage to develop learning outcomes. Also, as learning materials, the teacher can use the competence indicators of achievement to design activities in the classroom. If the teacher considers that the class, for example, has not developed communicative competences properly, then the teacher can design some activities in which communication is going to be present. The same happens with cooperation or with many other competences that are extremely relevant nowadays, not only in learning, but also for the future. As a professional development, the teachers are aware of the competences that their students need to develop in each learning stage. So in this way, the teacher is going to develop different activities or tasks so students can strengthen those competences along the unit or along the school year. Thank you very much for participating in this presentation, and I would really love to know about your questions and opinions about it.
Thank you very much, Essia. We actually do have a couple of questions. I'll start by the first one, which I will read. A teacher that doesn't believe in students and is only worried about students' academic performance, can that teacher change the perspective and apply these strategies to develop life competencies?
Yeah, that's an extremely good question, Macarena. Thank you for that. Our curriculum, our national curriculum, I would say it's much more content-based. That is, that the teachers are much more involved in what I'm going to teach rather than how my students are learning or what other values or attitudes I can develop in the class. If we read the national curriculum, we will understand that it should be integrated. I mean, the teacher should develop cognitive or concepts, procedures, and values, attitudes, right? So that is the way it should be. But sometimes it's not possible to develop, for example, values or attitudes because of time, because of heterogeneous classes, or because the teacher does not know their students enough. But I think it's extremely relevant to take into account not only the concepts or contents that the teacher is going to develop in the class, but also the procedures. Why is this content useful for my students, and what values or what attitudes they can also perform in a very integrated way.
Thank you, Essia. Before we go to other questions, I do remind and invite our audience to write the questions in the question and answer box or in the chat. But based on your answer, Essia, I can also figure out that planning, including the life competencies within the teacher plan, not just the lesson plan, in terms of the variety of activities, how that is going to be assessed is a must.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. For example, if we go into learning to learn, it is very easy for the teacher to include some tasks or some very brief activities during the lesson, in which the teacher can be monitoring the way in which the students are developing learning to learn. That is by asking questions as the ones that I presented in the monitoring stage or in the planning stage before they actually start the task. They can also plan the way in which they are going to do it, and they can talk to each other with their partners or with the teacher, so they can be aware. I think that's the most important thing, is to be aware on my learning process, not to leave the learning process only to the teacher, to think that the teacher is the one who is going to assess this learning process. It should also be part of the learning responsibility and the learner's experience.
Mm-hmm. And here we have another question. With regards to collaboration, cooperation and collaboration, oftentimes just doing group activities is considered to be sort of cooperation. What can you tell us about that?
Well, the approach cooperative language learning tells us that when we create groups or teams in which students are going to share their points of view, or they are going to discuss, or they are going to do some research, it's necessary that the members of the groups have some roles. So when you give each student a role, it's easier, right, for the students in the group and also for the teacher to analyze or assess, I would say, the purpose of that task. So when you give certain group work to students, it would be also important to set the objectives. What are the objectives for that task, and what the objectives for those students, members of the group, are going to be? A good example of this work is using web quests in the classroom, right? The web quest has a very interesting structure in which the teacher provides a task, right? This task, the web quest is undoubtedly based on task-based teaching or project-based learning. So when the students start a task in the web quest, they can take some roles. So if they are going to gather in groups of 4 or 5 people, each of those members will have a role in the task. So that is a very easy way for the teacher also to assess the accomplishment of that task by seeing how much the students, the members of the group, completed.
Thank you. Here, another question. How do teachers sort of teach life competencies with other teachers from other disciplines at the same school?
Sorry, could you?
Yes. How do you teach life competencies to the students working with teachers from other disciplines, whether being mathematics, biology?
Yeah, teaching life competencies should be transferable to all fields, right? All disciplines. I would say that project-based learning, again, is a very interesting approach in which we can include many different fields of very many different areas, right? I have worked, for example, with project-based learning with teachers in secondary education, and they created very interesting projects in which they had, for example, a physical education teacher with a biology or natural science teacher and the English teacher. So they created a project together, right, taking into account their disciplines, but at the same time creating just one single project in which all those subjects were involved, right? And in that way, you can also develop these life competencies. There you have cooperation, communication, social responsibility. Social responsibility, we didn't tackle this topic today, but social responsibility is quite an interesting competence, life skill that students can develop, and it is extremely possible to develop through project-based learning, right? For example, analyzing a problem in the community. It could be at school, or in the neighborhood, or district, or even the country, right? So they can analyze what is the issue that they want to do some research about. they can get together with other subject teachers, and they can create a unique project in order to give solution to this problem. So in this case, we are developing social responsibility, and at the same time, we are also working with cooperation, right? And being aware about the situation that we want to solve. Problem solving would be another competence.
Mm-hmm. I have, Essia, another question from a teacher that just wrote, so thank you for that. What should teachers do with the mood chart results? Should they pay more attention to some students over others based on the answers? What about if a student doesn't want to open up about the reasoning behind their feelings?
Yeah, well, it has many different opportunities to work. For example, in my remote teaching classes, I have used this mood meter, and I should tell, for example, my students to show different colors. Let's say, how do you feel today? And some of them should show a green card or a yellow card or a blue card. In one class, many students showed a blue card. So I was aware on how they felt, because I know beforehand what it means to feel, to be in the blue quadrant. Okay, so in this way, you can also have a picture, a picture of the way in which your students are feeling at the beginning of the lesson, for example. So that is some information that you get in order to change the activity, or to give an activity, a warm-up activity, for example, that enlightens a little bit or engage the students a little bit so they can feel better, right? Or if some of them show the red card, then you can have some minutes, right, to talk a little bit what's going on in the class. Did they have a problem, or are they frustrated, etc. So you can use the mood meter as information, individual information, but also general information, right? Because the whole group can give you an idea on how they feel. Now, if from the whole group, there is one that several classes is showing you a red card, then you can have an interview with that student, right? To know exactly what is going on and how you can help. But there are many uses that you can have. Another thing that is important is that in this book, Permission to Feel by Mark Brackett, he mentions different ways of not only recognizing your emotions, understanding because of the method that he uses, but also regulating your own emotions, right? Which is, I would say, one of the most difficult things to do, but also extremely useful nowadays.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Essie, for answering that question. And one of the competencies that was mentioned was social responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
How do we go about that in the classroom amongst all of these other life competencies?
Yeah, well, social responsibility is being aware of citizenship, right? Being aware what is going on, not only in the world, but even at home, right? Sometimes we notice a lot of information in the news or outside our homes, but we hardly ever pay attention to what is going on in my home. So one of the activities that you can have, for example, regarding primary education, you can have how do I help at home? How do I help my mom, for example? So you can develop in your class. Let's imagine that you are teaching English, and you are just going through the unit about daily habits, for example, and you can also develop this life competence. Give me 3 experiences or 3 tasks, 3 chores that you do at home. How do you help your mom, for example? So in that way, you are getting the students opportunities to talk about a very simple task or competence which is helping at home. Now, if we go into higher level students, they can create some projects, right? Projects together with history teacher or natural science teacher, in which they can talk about nature, the environment, etc. And they can produce something, a product. It could be a poster, it could be a video, or anything that can help the students recognize what elements, issues are going around regarding environment and how they can help.
Thank you. Just a reminder before we go to the next question, please type your questions into the chat box. So we still have time, but I'm going to draw up another question related to the type of methodology that would be most suitable in order to, as a teacher, gather evidence of these learning outcomes with the competencies. Would you say that that would be sort of project-based, or which other type?
Yeah, depending very much on the objectives that the teacher has, because we can have many different life competencies going on at the same time. But if you consider that some specific competence needs to be developed, right, in a deeper way, then you can develop a task, or you can have your own assessment, right? It could be assessment for the students, or also assessment of a task, a specific task that deals with this competence that you want to develop in a deeper way. So the important thing is to work together with other teachers in the team. It could be the school or the institute or the university, and be aware of how important these life competencies are, and which you would prefer or need to develop, right? In some schools, for example, they have a monthly competence or a monthly value to develop, right? So all the teachers are going to work together in order to develop that specific attitude or competence. But that depends very much on the school policies.
Great. It looks like we've covered up most of the questions so far, but is there anything else, Essia, that you would like to cover up before wrapping up?
Well, as I said, the development of life competencies nowadays is extremely necessary, especially to develop some respectful attitude towards others. And the way in which we can do this is by being aware of what is important for our students, right? Also, it's really necessary to involve the families. Sometimes families need a lot of help in terms of life competences. Sometimes they are not able to help their kids, for example, at home while they are studying, especially in this context of emergency remote classes. So I would say that nowadays the life competence of learning to learn is extremely necessary, because in that way you are not only helping the student but also helping the family, right? And this is something also that needs to be developed in future teachers, right? Future teachers are aware of how much they need to know to develop in their students, but sometimes programs do not include these elements in the programs, in the course programs. That's why well, universities or teacher training programs should be aware of this and also include those contents in each semester, in each course that they are teaching.
Would you say, I cannot avoid making this question myself, would you say, based on your experience, especially in teacher training programs and working at schools as well, which are those competencies that you see that are so far mostly developed, and those that need like further use and practice and like work and development?
Well, I would say that digital literacy is one of the competencies that is mostly developed, especially because they are called the 21st century skills. But I would say that the world and society needs much more than just digital literacy, right? I think that it's a way of teaching people to become human. So the way in which we can help others to become more human in the sense of developing, for example, cooperation, developing critical thinking, so as not to believe everything that you can find in the social media at this very moment. I think it's extremely necessary, right? And sometimes teachers think that I don't have the time to do this in my class because they are focused on the content, right? Because our national curriculum is like that. They, on one side, they push the teacher to teach lots of contents, right? But the important thing here is to have an integrated class. That is to teach not only the content, but what I do with that content and what attitudes are around that content. You see, so I would say that there are many life competences that should be taught, but not theoretically. They need to be implemented in practice.
Oh, thank you very much. Yes, yeah, this has been very interesting. And of course, it enlightens us on strategies that we have to use in the classroom at the different levels, primary, secondary, and higher education. But not just to teach them with our students in the classroom through the diversity of activities, but as well being conscious and aware from role modeling them, because otherwise there's a sort of contradiction. So
exactly,
it's creating this awareness. And as you mentioned, we can learn contents, we can find information about contents, but what we do with that information and become better people, that's precisely what life competencies in the very end aim at. And I guess that with the pandemic, of course, there's sort of been a boost there. So do you notice any difference in terms of life competencies development before and after? I mean, after the pandemic? I'm being very optimistic.
Yes. Well, recently, we had a research on teachers along the country, and there were many teachers who participated in this research. And one of the things that really caught my attention was that teachers were eager to know more about emotional development, right? One would say that knowing about technology, ICT in the classroom, or platforms to deliver my lesson was much more important. But you can notice that the development of life skills, in this case, getting to know my students and knowing how emotions they feel at a certain moment was much more important, right? So I would say that this particular competence was more developed during the pandemic, right? Because when in face-to-face classes, we don't think about it. We just go to the class, we can see our students and we notice how they feel because of the interaction that we have with them. But not being able to see each other, to communicate, I think it gives us the urgency of knowing how they feel and how I can teach the lessons without being face to face with them. So I think that it has been an opportunity to learn something new.
No, thank you, Essia, very much for this enlightening talk on the importance of life competencies and how we can put it into practice as a teacher with the colleagues, with the students, like in every environment in which we are. And I also want to thank the audience that is present, and we will make you we'll send you a survey later on to know interesting topics that you might be interested in. And I really appreciate, Essia, for your talk, which is very enlightening and very practical as well as
thank you
how
very
to
much.
go about it into the classroom.
Yes, there are also always many different ways in which we can deal with these life competences, and I'm sure that many teachers can give even more examples, but it depends very much on the reality that the students that we have, the situations, everything is really contextualized. So I think we can learn much more about this topic, and of course share it with others.
So thank you, Essia, very much, and thank you everyone. So we will soon contact most of the teachers and especially you for another talk. It's been very interesting. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a very nice day, and thank you for inviting me.